film critic and a member of New York Film Critics Circle. I'm so honored to be here. And let's introduce our amazing panel of guests. Please first welcome Elle Fanning. Please welcome Inga, its daughter Lilleaas. Stellan Skarsgård. Please welcome Renate Reinsve. And please welcome Director Joachim. Hello everyone, so nice to be here with you tonight with this big panel. Joachim, I would love to start with you. You and your co-writer Stellan have been working throughout pretty much your career. You gave us a lot of movies that we love, most recently The Worst Person in the World. What brought you to this story of family, of parsing generational trauma through filmmaking?
Thank you. Hello? Yeah, okay, that's really
There it is.
Hello. Okay, here we are. Thank you all for coming. It's so wonderful to see a full house like this. Thank you. How did we begin? Yes, it's true. I sit in a room with one of my best friends, Elle, who I've known since we were teenagers, and we are complete film buffs. And we love to do what you've just been doing, sitting in the cinema, watching movies in the dark, and talking about them afterwards. So there's always two things happening at once when we write a film. First of all, we're trying to find a story and stuff from life, and now we're both parents, and we also have old parents ourselves, and a lot of themes around that, of course, but we also want to play around with film form. What kind of movies would we like to see? Just be very taste-driven. And, I grew up with a lot of stories that were based on character and life, Kramer versus Kramer, The Breakfast Club, a lot of great movies that were about human problems that when I could relate to them, I felt that it kind of felt comforting and there was something to think about. And I think we wanted to talk about characters in the family this time. We were kind of ready at the age that we now are to talk about a big group of characters in the family, different age groups, and see if we could make more of a polyphonic story, I would call it in musical terms, that it's not just one of these great actors or characters that tell the story, but together that they would somehow tell the story.
Thank you. Renate, so wonderful to have you here. Congratulations on this brilliant performance.
Thank you.
This is, of course, your reunion with Joachim. As I mentioned, we've recently seen you and loved the movie Worst Person in the World. What was it like for you to reunite with Joachim and build on that collaboration? What were you most looking forward to exploring through this new project?
I have a whole story I usually tell, but the first thing that came to mind when you said something now was the first day on set, where it was so surreal being back, because of course we had prepared for something totally different world in the preparation, in the rehearsals, and the character had more emotional weight. It was a more mature role. But when we were on the first day, I remember, because you have this ritual where Anders, who plays one of the boyfriends in Worst Person in the World, he usually comes and he kisses the camera to kind of give grace to the whole production. And I just heard everyone clapping, and then I was very emotional, and I was in my trailer, and you found me crying in the trailer, and then you comforted me all the way to the set, and it was actually like, at that moment I felt detached from Worst Person in the World. We were like, okay, it feels like being back together, but now we are starting something very new. And we knew, of course, it was going to be very different. Worst Person was so open and naive in a way, or the character was, and this was going to be a lot deeper, and we wanted to explore something.
And it's super new. It's like if you go from one relationship and then fall in love with someone else, in the early parts they become this grief reaction, even though you're happy.
Yeah.
And you're detaching from the past. Is that
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Yeah, I think a little bit.
Interesting.
Well, I had this, but
Totally makes sense.
I had this.
I remember the moment. I just
Yes.
wasn't aware that that's what happened to you.
Yeah, throughout, I don't think I even knew, but throughout the whole production, I was like, it's so weird, this new stage. It felt like we were going into a new kind of life together in a way, in exploring these themes and this character, and it was, I don't know if that made any sense. It's the first time I thought about this, but yeah, came up. Yeah.
Thank you. Stellan, I think maybe a different version of this question too. First of all, can I say I would love a family member who would gift me Mikael Haneke movies for my birthday.
I think that's a very good idea too. Everybody's laughing at it.
Tell us a little bit about your kind of entry point to Gustav's headspace, trying to reconcile some past mistakes through art making, through filmmaking, and reaching out to his daughters through that.
Well, I mean, I have a very boring way of starting. I try to find out what the director wants, what kind of film he's making, and who he is. And I didn't know Joachim from before. I just met him, and he was a stranger to me, but I knew from his films that he could make films. So I start from another side, because as soon as I find out what the director needs, what kind of film he's making, then I can do anything else absolutely free. You know, I have the framework of for my characters there, and it's much more improvisation than you think, and much less planning, and much less intellectual work. It's sort of emotional work.
Inga, I really love your character, Agnes. I think in every family, a person like her is really needed. She's definitely very tender, and I also like the relationship between the sisters, how maybe she was the caregiver first, and then the roles have reversed as they age. So tell me a little bit about your entry point to this headspace, to this relationship.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I read the script, I just felt it really resonated with me. The whole, like, how she's so filled with love for everyone, and she's really passionate almost about keeping everyone together. And she's a mother, and she's a wife, and she's a sister, and she's a daughter, and she really works very hard to be all those roles and to make it like come together in a way, sew them together. And we had rehearsals, and we talked a lot about life and family and all of these things. And then when we started working, I felt like working with Renate is so much fun, and it's we work sort of similarly. We get to like look each other in the eyes, and just the feelings just start coming. And so I just felt that this character really filled me with a lot of love and emotion. I don't know if that made sense.
Thank you. Elle, congratulations to you as well for this wonderful performance as Rachel Camp. I really connected to her because I feel like she comes both as an outsider to this family and as someone who has been wanting more from her art. And you are an artist that was been acting since childhood very successfully. How did you relate to that crossroads that she was in at that moment in time that we meet her?
Yes, that was something that I was definitely really drawn to and interested in exploring with Rachel, because I think that when we first meet her, she has this longing for something bigger in her life. I mean, gosh, I think in my career I've definitely had many different phases and struggled with different things, and so I can relate to some of those feelings that she had, and I think it was honestly more cathartic for me than I realized playing the character. I feel like I kind of worked through some things that maybe I didn't realize that I had felt in the past. But I also kind of love the moral dilemma that she's put in a way, because at the same time, she wants to do this role, and she's finally seen for her talent, something she's wanted. She feels like this is real, this is, she's searching for authenticity, and then being kind of set as the outsider, but amongst this family drama, there is like this moral dilemma that she has to decide, am I going to stay and do this, even though obviously there's something afoot with, I'm kind of miscast for this part, or should I stay and do something that I want really badly? And I do love the surprise that she, walks away from something that she wants. And I think that the film has such a hopeful quality for all of the characters, but it's not tied up in a perfect bow. We don't know what she's going to go on to next, but I think that through the experience, she has learned so much about herself and has, gained this confidence, which I could definitely, I've had those feelings in my life, like working with directors on set of, I can physically feel my confidence grow, or like my embarrassment melt away, or just coming into my own. And I feel like with this film, it's a different phase for me in my career, even of the things that I learned on the set, working with Joachim and everyone sitting here. I felt like my confidence even grew more. So yeah, she was maybe more similar to me than I realized. Yeah.
Thank you. And I want to ask a question to all three of you, Renate, Stellan, and Inga. This is not the first talk that I moderated with you, and it's very palpable to me, the camaraderie and the friendship that you have built over the course of this process. But the relationship, obviously, we see on the screen is more tense, it's complex. How did you build that off screen, to that family dynamic of with a history? So maybe.
Well, it's very different from what we feel, or what we feel as persons, than what we feel like our roles. Because I mean, even if you hate each other as roles, you love each other as persons. It doesn't go together. And this was like a fucking love fest. It was disgusting.
Still is.
Yeah, it was too much.
And Renate and Inga, as playing sisters, how did you build that dynamic, especially that scene where towards the end you're holding each other and there are tears? It's just so wonderfully and tenderly done. So maybe tell me a little bit about building that energy, that dynamic.
Well, I think Inga touched on it before. It's the way Joachim structures our work in the process is by putting them in rehearsal, and he does it in a very clever way. I didn't really meet Stellan that much in rehearsals, right? I met Inga a lot, and so you kind of set it up for a dynamic before that helps us go into what we're building. And I think me and Inga, we were working in a very similar way. We, of course, also the way we talk about the characters with Joachim and the way we kind of lean in and empathize with them over time, it kind of sears into the subconscious. And then when you're on set, because you've built something with your craft very thoroughly for weeks before, then you can really let go. And Joachim is so, he's so emotionally, what's the word? Invested, thank you, into our work when we're there, so that, and he really urges us to let go in the moment so that we feel very free. It's a very flexible room, but it's of course built on everything that we talked about before, so that's kind of my words went out that door. That was the wind you heard.
Thank you. Inga, do you have anything to add?
I think I agree with everything she said. It's like it felt like a sort of an exercise of empathy, that, and the sort of the environment was very, how do you say, it was very like,
Inga's word went well.
what am I trying to say?
Can you close the door, please?
You know, when it's set up for success, you know, it's easy to do it because
Okay, thank you.
She said all the good things.
Joachim, I would really love to bring up this family house where a lot of the story takes place. Not to sound like a cliche, but it's definitely a character of its own, and there's a lived-in quality, there's history, layers and layers of meaning that we find. How did you kind of engage with those production design elements, which is a really crucial part of the story?
Yeah, speaking of sort of from a craft point of view, it's really interesting. We found this house that we really liked, and we realized we had a limited time for shooting. Even though we had quite a few days, we also had to change it over and draw a picture of the house through the 20th century, basically from 1918, the 20s, 30s, 40s, and forward, right? So the production design team built a replica out in the studio, actually very close from where you come from, right outside of town. Kind of a lovely area there out by the nature and the rivers. And we built, it's true. And so we could go between the real house and the studio and change it around and change wallpapers and all this stuff. And on top of that, they created these big LED walls called virtual production outside where we could project while we were filming real photorealistic versions of how it would look outside the building in the 30s or 50s and so forth. So when we had Gustav as a child running around in there, we could see a car, a perfect replica of a 50s car drive by, and the kid would just look after the car and he'd film it. So it was like a time machine. It was hilarious. And we took the family from the real house into the studio where it had been kind of created a situation from the 30s, and they were shocked. It was exactly like their forefathers had lived, so it's very exciting for me. As a bit of a person who's obsessed with memory and time, I thought it was very interesting.
And on that note, you mentioned different time periods. You're collaborating here again with your DP, Casper Tuxen.
Sure.
You're going to different time periods, and there are also films within films. You're filming stage and different ideas. And I feel like the visual tone of this movie sometimes hovers a little bit about reality, even though it's rooted in reality. How did you approach those tonal shifts visually with them?
I think that's what I love about movies generally, is to try to find a vibe, a sense of something tactile, light, situations, mood. That's what movies are about more than anything. People and moods. So Casper Tuxen is someone I worked with for a long time, and he's the wonderful thing is that he measures real light. So if I say, oh, it's 11 in the evening, he's like, it's actually 1 o'clock at night, the kind of thing you want, isn't it, and stuff. So he really researches realistic light, and it has a specific feeling, an unconscious feeling. And what I find interesting about films, and other people's films more than anything, is all the unconscious stuff that happens, all the things we feel and think, and that we try to, and we talk about this a lot, also in performance, that we allow a space for interpretation. Of course we want it to be specific, and we want there to be events that are understandable, but we also want there to be some mystery and some feelings that are not too literal. But that balance is what it's all about in creative collaborations, I think.
Thank you. And Elle and Renate, this is a question for you. You're both actors who are playing actors, but in the film they play other characters as well. I think of it as almost like Russian dolls of acting within acting. There's a big meta element. I'm wondering what goes into crafting a performance like that you have to consider all those different layers. Maybe we can start with Elle.
Sure. Yes, that was definitely something that, reading the script, that it sticks out. For me, it's particularly, I guess it's a couple things, because I think the character, she could have slipped into a cliche kind of version of this Hollywood American star coming in and have this air. But then I also knew that she needed to have an air a little bit in the beginning in Deauville to make you believe that she is, a famous person. So it was kind of like starting there, and then slowly when she gets to Oslo, it's like stripping her down until then she's wearing like a Nordic sweater and has the brown hair, and then she's a little bit who am I? But the big scene, I guess, within acting is really the monologue that we have, which I know it's so important because, Renate has to say the same thing just in a different language, and that text means something very different to both of our characters. And I think for me, I was aware that monologue, it needed to feel like a surprise to Rachel that she got emotional. And so obviously that's planned out, so you can't think about it too much, but I knew that that's how I wanted it to feel, and that emotion it's still real emotion, and she is being moved by the text in a way that she maybe has never felt in acting before, so that's something that's kind of new. But then also the emotion that she has when she gives up the part that's Rachel herself. So I was interested in playing kind of the different things of that. That's something Joachim and I talked about, but then again, you can't analyze it because almost it's like I do have to surprise myself in that moment. But I always got emotional around that when I say I want a home, I want a home. And it's all probably something subconsciously personal in me, but also I think for Rachel, that's kind of the searching and the longing coming through. So she still relates to the text, but it's like, then she starts pushing the emotion out, you know, she gets excited that she's in front of a director, like doing a good job, you know, feels maybe it's the best she's ever been. But then again, it was just a rehearsal. So then that's interesting too. It's like a moment in time. It's like not captured on camera for her, which I never really thought about that before. But sometimes you have to have those moments, and it's like, oh, it's fleeting, and that's it. And it wasn't captured, but it makes you grow. So yeah, I loved the layers of it.
Thank you. And Renate?
Wow. Here comes the words. No, for me, I loved that Gustav and Nora mirrored each other in this movie, and that Nora was so angry with her father, and it was blinding her of really being able to see him and communicating because what she has experienced, him leaving and not being there. But also all those things she's never processed, and she's never been able to communicate, but the only place she can is on stage. And that's also what gives her the force as an actress. And when she knows that she has to go into that to have a good performance, she physically runs away because she panics. And that was very funny to play, and relatable in many ways. Yeah, I think that was maybe she could have been anything. She didn't necessarily have to be an actress, but that was also, I think she subconsciously became an actress to get to be with Gustav in some way because he's a director. So it was there. I love playing around with what she knew about herself and what she didn't know about herself. That was the most interesting part for me.
Thank you. We have to wrap up, but I want to end